Hey guys, we are reacting to most amazing top 10 again. Let's get right on with this video right now.
Guys, I'm glad you're all in one piece. We are here too at Most Amazing Top 10. I'm pretty glad that the world hasn't ended. Now, if that sounds like a pretty strange way for me to say hello to you, firstly, yes it is, but secondly, I've been looking at some times when the world as we know it really did come quite close to the brink, and it's made me really appreciate everything that little bit more. Now, do you want to see what I mean? I'm going to pretend every single one of you said yes and jump right into our top 10 events that almost ended the world with our number 10, which is the Chicxulub asteroid. It was the third biggest thing to ever hit our planet, but you might know it as the one that killed off the dinosaurs. This asteroid was a whopping 6 miles wide and slammed into the Earth about 66 million years ago off the coast of modern-day Mexico. Scientists point to this impact as causing the mass extinction event that happened all across the world. At first, it caused some of the biggest mega tsunamis to ever occur, and the colossal shockwaves would have triggered global earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, the likes of which we've probably never seen in our lives. But what really killed off the dinosaurs was the dust cloud that blocked out the sun and cooled the Earth down. No sunlight meant no plants, and no plants affected everything. It's estimated that 75% of all species on Earth vanished forever. Life got hit very hard, but some species were able to adapt to the new world, including the ancestors of modern mammals, and also not all of the dinosaurs died out. Flying dinosaurs survived, and they eventually evolved into what we now call birds. Crazy. So life got hit hard, but not quite knocked out. Jumping right forward now for our number 9, we're going to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. At the height of the Cold War, where the US and most of Europe were flexing their military muscles with the Soviet Union, one event was the closest the world has ever come to all-out nuclear war. On October 14th, 1962, American intelligence reported that there were Soviet nuclear missiles deployed in the communist country of Cuba, which is only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The US didn't like this, and words quickly spread about Washington that the best plan of action might be to just invade Cuba, replace their government, and dismantle their nuclear weapons. President John F. Kennedy didn't like this idea because he thought the Soviets would then launch their own nuclear missiles and start a nuclear war that would leave most of the world looking like that scene out of the Terminator. You know what I mean? The standoff involved America setting up a naval blockade to stop Russia from getting to Cuba, and when Russia said they would ignore it, America raised its nuclear threat level to DEFCON 2, the highest it's ever been. The standoff continued until a deal was reached when all hope seemed lost. Disaster was avoided, but for many people, this was one of the most terrifying moments in their lives and could very well have been the end of the world as we know it. Next up, for number 8, we're going to be jumping back about 252 million years ago to the Permian-Triassic event. Now, this might be the closest that life on Earth has ever come to simply ending. This was a time when 70% of all land vertebrate species became extinct. It was also the only known example of mass extinction of insects, and also saw the extinction of 96% of all marine species. In short, it was the worst extinction event this planet has ever seen. Of the small percentage that did survive, everything alive that you know today, including you and me, are descendants of them. For such a big extinction event, you might think it would be quite easy to figure out what caused it, but it also happened a very long time ago, so the trail is kind of cold. Scientists point to shifting land masses that turned oceans into stagnating bogs, devoid of the oxygen that all sea creatures need. At the same time, huge volcanoes were pouring out enough sulfur to plunge the Earth into a serious greenhouse effect. Some even say that the final blow was a massive asteroid hitting the Earth, as if things weren't bad enough. It's amazing that life did manage to survive at all, and if it didn't, you and I wouldn't be here to talk about it, so pretty lucky stuff. Moving on to number 7 now, we're going to be talking about a supervolcano called Toba that almost wiped out our human ancestors. The Toba super eruption was a supervolcanic eruption, obviously, that happened around 73,000 years ago. It was the largest known eruption on the planet in the last 25 million years. years, and unlike a lot of supervolcano eruptions, there were actually humans on the planet by this point. The eruption produced between 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers cubed worth of material that was pumped into the atmosphere and caused a volcanic winter that lasted up to 10 years. It destroyed many food sources for humans and led the global population of humans to be reduced to as few as 3,000 to 10,000 people. Just let that sink in. Look at the counter down there below the video. Look at the views. You see, there might have actually been more of you guys who are watching this video than humans who survived this volcanic winter. Crazy. Now, I'm glad they did, because we're literally all descended from just those few people. Well, at the very least, I just blew my own mind. Coming in at number 6, we have the Black Death. This was one of the most devastating pandemics in human history. In 1331, a series of plagues, of which the Black Death is thought to have been one of them, started spreading through China and Asian countries. Over the next 15 years, it killed an estimated 25 million people there before it spread into Europe in 1347. One theory is that it was spread by invading Mongol armies and that they catapulted the bodies of the infected dead over the walls of cities. Pretty nasty stuff. Either way, when it hit Europe, the effects were devastating. Over the next 7 years, it made its way into every corner of Europe, cutting down people everywhere it went. The death toll on the continent is hard to estimate, but the best guess is between 75 to 200 million people. It also devastated the Middle East and even spread into Africa through Egypt. Luckily, people began to become naturally resistant to it. Otherwise, it could have spread to every corner of the earth. Moving on to number 5, we have the Laki Volcano in Iceland. Now, Iceland's been known as having a lot of volcanic activity throughout its history, even in recent years, but perhaps the worst for humans was when the Icelandic craters of Laki started spewing out lava and didn't stop for 8 months between 1783 and 1784. Now, this was obviously devastating for those nearby. It actually killed over half of Iceland's livestock and led to a vicious famine that killed a quarter of all Icelanders. It also created acid rain that burned holes in leaves and killed trees. But the eruption was so big that its effects were felt on a global scale. It pumped sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere with lava fountains that were 1,400 meters tall. That's crazy. The sulfur dioxide from the eruption was spread across the entire northern hemisphere and caused untold droughts and famines across the planet. The death toll was estimated to be 6 million people. At number 4, we've got a pretty scary one from as recently as the 1990s, and it's one that I'd never even heard about before I made this video. A bacteria that almost ended the world. This was a time when scientists almost accidentally created a bacteria that would alcohol poison all known plant life. It sounds crazy, but it's true. Back then, biotech researchers were experimenting with the Klebsiella planticola, which is basically a bacteria that lives in the soil and decomposes dead plant waste. It's completely harmless, but they genetically modified the bacteria to produce alcohol after it consumed plant waste from farmers' crops. It could then be turned into gasoline or cooking fuel, or most temptingly to farmers, fertilizer. The problem was the modified bacteria didn't wait for parts of the plant to die. It just started consuming and producing a slime of alcohol on the living crops. The crops would then get alcohol poisoning and die, and the bacteria would just spread to every plant species known to humans, including every food crop. Yes, this actually happened, and it was totally approved to start being used on farms everywhere, and was only stopped almost by accident when Dr. Elaine Ingham of Oregon State University noticed something was wrong and called a stop to the whole thing. So if you're looking for an unsung hero of the entire planet, it's Elaine. Props to her. Next up at number 3, we've got the comet that never hit, and most people never even knew about, but it might have been the biggest near miss the world has ever seen, or not seen. They called it the Bonillas comet. Mexican astronomer Jose Bonilla was pointing his telescope at the sun to make some observations when he noticed 450 dark, unidentified objects passing in front of the sun. He even took several photographs. 3 years later, he published his observations to the scientific community. Many people didn't know what to make of it for over 100 years, and they came up with all kinds of theories about flying geese in front of the sun or UFOs. But finally, in 2011, researchers from the National Autonomous University of Mexico published a 15-page paper where they interpreted Jose's initial observations. They think he actually saw the fragments of a giant comet that had broken up near Earth, and they think it broke up between about 8,000 to as little as 583 kilometers from Earth's surface. That's no distance at all, trust me. And in case you were thinking it was a tiny one, they estimate it was about 1 billion tons in weight. It's a good job it broke up and did not cause any damage, and it's a good job that nobody actually, other than Jose, observed the leftover pieces. Otherwise, everyone might have had a global panic attack. For our number 2 now, we're going back to 1983, when a training exercise almost ended the world. Now, this is the year that Russia almost started a nuclear World War III, and nobody even knew. A recently declassified document released by the US government said that in 1983, we may have inadvertently placed our relations with the Soviet Union on a hair trigger, as it turns out that NATO, which the US is a part of, were conducting a training exercise in Europe where they took part in simulated nuclear attacks just for training purposes. It wasn't real. Now, the Soviet Union knew this was a training exercise, but they thought it was all a front for a real attack that was going to take place. So, in response, they began moving nuclear missiles to launch sites and readied their air force to start dropping nuclear bombs on Europe. Luckily, America didn't react aggressively to this, and Russia backed off. Eventually, everybody realized their mistake and calmed down. But nobody knew pretty much anything about this until 2015, and now everybody's taking a deep sigh of relief about 33 years after it happened, or rather, didn't happen. You get what I mean? And finally, at number 1, we've got the worst ice age in history that almost wipes out life before it really got started. They call it Snowball Earth, and they're not kidding at all. This wasn't anything like the ice ages you guys are probably thinking of, with woolly mammoths and cavemen. Those were a lot warmer and a lot more recent. The last Snowball Earth ended 635 million years ago. Almost the entire planet was encased in glaciers a mile thick. The average temperatures on Earth were minus 56 degrees Celsius. That's 14 degrees colder than the North Pole is in winter today. That's crazy. At that point, early life had been evolving on Earth for a while, but it was still only at the level of microscopic bacteria or like simple algae, and they struggled to survive on this planet that seemed absolutely determined to kill them. They had to live in undersea volcanic vents or cracks in the ice sheet at the equator where the ice was thin enough for them to get sunlight. Life did manage to hold on and survive, and it's a good thing it did, because otherwise we wouldn't even be here to talk about it. But yeah, here we are, guys, safe and sound, making videos and watching videos, because life always finds a way, luckily. Which one of these did you guys think was our closest call?
Okay guys, I'm gonna have to end the video off here. Like the video to see my cat in videos more. Say bye. Meow. Bye guys, like the video and subscribe. Bye.